I know you were promised our panelists back, but we've decided to shift things up a little bit and stay in the world of sports for our next little panel called Winning Games, and trying to understand how sports can supercharge investment opportunities and inspire new generations. Things that I think we already discussed a little bit in the earlier panel around obviously the development of esports and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that Manchester United have been facing. But first of all, I want to introduce this amazing team of panelists. First up, we have His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki Al Faisal, who's the chairman of the Saudi General Sports Authority. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Nullah
Yes.
who is the founder and executive director of Kosmos and also the co-founder of Constellation Capital. You will be hearing Kosmos quite a bit because actually 3 of the panelists, raise your hands, 3 of the panelists are engaged in Kosmos, so it's sort of a 3 musketeers, I guess, each with their background. So one of the Kosmos people are Mike Evans, and he's a special advisor to the CEO of the Miami Marlins and also our CEO of Timbaland Productions, which is music business, right?
Yes, it is.
Kind of different business. And we have Edmund, who is the MD of SECA and the president of a esports team that some of you, not esports team. Formula E team that actually have been in Saudi this year.
Yes.
Called...
TECHEETAH.
Exactly, yes. And last but not least, we thought it was very important to have a tech guy, a venture capitalist that knows all about what's happening in the technological space. So that is Aneel Ranadive, and he's the managing partner of Soma Capital and also a co-owner of Sacramento Kings. That basically probably makes me the only guy who doesn't own a sports club. So I kind of feel bad about that.
I don't.
You don't either. No, but so to begin with you though, because you, Your Highness, are a passionate sportsman and also, I've heard, quite a good racing driver. And I must congratulate you also with the amazing work you have done here in Saudi Arabia in bringing exciting sports events to the kingdom. So for you, that seems like a personal mission, but why do you think it's so important to pull these sports events to Saudi Arabia?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, the demand and the growth that the country is going through. We have a very young population. 70% of the population is below 35. So, and it's growing, and there's a big demand. And today with social media, they see everything. So one of the reasons is we want to host these events is for people to enjoy these events in the kingdom. But it's also, it drives our strategy within the GSA of diverse sports that we want to promote within the kingdom. And people can see where the world have reached to by hosting international events and opening opportunities for young Saudi talents to put a goal or ambitions towards reaching to these events that we host. And a big part of the change within the kingdom is the sector of sport and growing the sector of sport, because we think that if you grow the sector, job opportunities will occur, and the contribution towards the GDP will increase. I think we haven't tapped into even maybe 10% of the potential that we have. If you look at the benchmarking compared to other countries that we benchmark to, we're far behind, I would say. So today our contribution towards the GDP is around 0.1%, and that our mandate within 2030 is to grow that to 0.8%. So that means that today there's 1.6 billion Saudi riyals being spent in the market, and the target is to reach to 25 billion Saudi riyals. But also that will create around 130,000 job opportunities within 2030. So it's a new market. It's a new playing field, I would say, for international events to be hosted within the kingdom. But also there's the demand and there's the platform for the growth. If you look at the events that we've already hosted, such as Formula E last year, and it was the first time that we host something as big as that, and even in motorsport, and we had sold out tickets. The demand for this year, it's going to be in a month's time, and we're already selling a lot of tickets towards that. If you look at the boxing championship that's coming to Saudi, we have so far record sales compared to that, and that's between international and local demand. Dakar is being hosted in Saudi in January, and the rally, the beauty of the landscape and the diversity of the landscape, and also the climate change within the kingdom. It's going to be a rally that's going to cover 9,000 kilometers within the kingdom, and it's going to go from the Red Sea to the Eastern Province to the mountains and so on, and within the deserts. So I think the kingdom has a potential to be a global hub of sports, and the demand and the enthusiasm is there to support that.
Again, congratulations on that hard work and heart that you put into bringing sports, and obviously there's a massive growth potential. And Nullah, I mean, you obviously deal with and invest in some of these sports assets. Could you explain us a little bit more about what Kosmos is and some of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I want to say thanks, Thomas. Thanks, His Excellency. Thanks to the PIF for having us. You know, to echo a lot of thoughts, I think sports is one of the few things that truly breaks boundaries, brings people together, and transcends very clearly globally. So kind of expanding on that thesis, Kosmos is a vehicle we created, myself, Edmund, Mike here as well, FC Barcelona player Gerard Piqué, and Mr. Hiroshi Mikitani, the founder and chairman and CEO of Rakuten, among other things. And the five of us started Kosmos to truly do high-value impact investing in sports assets, because we believe sports is, like as I mentioned, truly global, truly transcends. So on that note, Kosmos is a holding company based out of Barcelona. We have 3 subsidiaries called Kosmos Tennis, Kosmos Studios, and Kosmos Football. And via Kosmos Tennis last year, we acquired the Davis Cup of tennis, which some of you may know if you are tennis fans. We acquired it, we're reformatting it and making a true World Cup of tennis. Through Kosmos Studios, we have several media content ventures. One is a sports media platform based out of the US called the Players Tribune. And then most recently, we just produced a multi-episodic series with FC Barcelona, one of the top, if not the best, soccer club in the world, and do many more content media things there.
Great, and obviously the world of sports is changing, and I think one of the changes that Edmund, you and I talked about, you quite provocatively stated people have an extension span of a goldfish in a way, and you've got to change how you serve content to people. So maybe you could mention a little bit about how you have done work around the Davis Cup to make it more ready for the digital age.
Sure. I mean, ever since I was young, I loved the Davis Cup. Obviously, tennis is a very singular sport. You have 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2. What we wanted to do is we really love the team concept because I think that really brings the emotionality of the sport. So what we did with Davis Cup was we're changing it into a World Cup format. It's very, very similar to the World Cup of football. We'll have the top 18 nations that are competing for the World Cup of tennis. We have made some substantial changes to the format. We're moving from 5 sets to 3 sets. And I think that's a really, really big development for us because obviously I think in sports these days, I think the attention span is coming shorter and shorter and shorter. So what we're trying to do is make it an objective for us to have a very, very good interest in the sport where we can sort of quicken the time span of the Davis Cup specifically. But obviously we think that these changes that we're making will have a huge impact on drawing more and more fans.
Great, and one of the things we mentioned in the earlier panel from STX Entertainment was how some of these celebrities, some of these sports stars are moving center stage, and I know, Mike, that's something that you have worked quite a bit with in terms of seeing that change and see how some of these sports stars are becoming media empires in themselves.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us, Thomas. I appreciate that. Yeah, to speak to Edmund's point, the attention span is really, really low. So you have to have a real fan interaction. And, it's a straight parallel between sports, entertainment. My background is entertainment, obviously. So we want to bring the fan experience to the forefront and keep them engaged. And that's why we, when we had the Davis Cup, we wanted to coin it as like, hey, we're bringing like the new Super Bowl. We're bringing we want to have everybody feel like it's an experience that they can't ever forget. Make it worthwhile. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Great, yes. And Aneel, to bring technology a little bit into the discussion here, could you just mention the next 20 exciting technological innovations that we're going to be seeing? No, just kidding. If you could just tell us a little about some of the exciting stuff that you've done in terms of expanding the audience experience. I know you've done an exciting job in Sacramento in terms of understanding how do you expand the stadium experience. We talked a little bit about it around Manchester United, but maybe you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so maybe just to frame that quickly in background,
exactly.
So you have an understanding of how we kind of see the lay of the land.
Yeah.
From the Silicon Valley, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I've been building startups and investing in tech for the last 13, 14 years. And working closely with my father, who built one of the all-time great enterprise software companies, TIBCO Software, which digitized Wall Street in the 90s with a complex event processing back-end infrastructure for banks, airlines, retailers, hotels, grew it to over $1 billion in yearly revenue, took it public, was a public company, very influential software that also gives us CEO relationships with heads of banks, airlines, retailers, hotels. He's also been a legendary investor involved at the early stages with the likes of Google, Yahoo, Salesforce, eBay. There's a famous story where Larry and Sergey met some of their first investors at his Christmas party. So kind of growing up, watching all these things unfold around me, I was always passionate about entrepreneurship and how software can automate things and make people's lives more easy, and how people could build products to touch hundreds of millions to even billions of people globally and push civilization forward. So I got very involved with an accelerator called Y Combinator, which over the last, since they started in 2005, over 150 billion worth of companies has come out of it, from Airbnb to Dropbox, Stripe, Reddit, Instacart, Optimizely. So our view is that there's been trillions of new wealth creation in tech in the in the last 10 years, and that we're just getting started. And 5 of the most valuable companies in the whole world are tech companies.
How do we bring that into sports?
Yeah, so we think as software continues to automate and solve everything, that the opportunity in media, sports, entertainment, and for live content is only going to grow. And that we don't know how we'll consume the content. Maybe it's this, maybe it's through virtual reality, maybe it's contact lenses. But the one thing that we believe will never go away is appetite for sports and live content. And it's our vision to kind of stay at the cutting edge of connecting with fans, enhancing the fan experience, bringing it more international. And so we think sports will always exist, and there's a shift also. We believe that there's trillions in assets moving into new content, and that consumer behavior is massively changing. And Facebook, for example, disrupting publishing. There was an article that Mark Andreessen published years ago. Software's eating the world. The biggest car company doesn't own any cars. Uber, the biggest hotel company, doesn't own any hotels. Airbnb, the biggest bookstore retailer, doesn't have any inventory. All cars are going to be self-driving. So software is disrupting every single category, and consumer purchasing behavior is also being disrupted. And we think influencers in media, sports, and entertainment are driving a lot of that shift in purchasing behavior. And so being, kind of having our finger on the pulse of many of the biggest athletes in the world through the NBA network, as Cosmos has as well, or entertainers even, that many of which play at our arena that we built, one of the most high-tech arenas in the world. It's all solar powered, that uses facial recognition for ticketing, makes use of the blockchain to connect with fans and enhance the fan experience, track and create different loyalty programs. We created a predictive gaming studio, so we're trying to stay on the cutting edge, implement all the most cutting edge technologies. Given my father's background in software and his partner in the Kings, Paul Jacobs, is the founder of Qualcomm, so we have a kind of software, hardware background to try to stay on the cutting edge of technology and keep creating new ways to connect with fans, enhance the fan experience, and understand where consumer behavior is shifting, where these trillions of dollars are being reallocated into new media companies, often driven by the biggest influencers in sports and media who play at venues like ours.
That was a lot of information and a very little time, but let's try, and the title of the session is obviously winning the games. So let's try and dive into some concrete examples of what is needed today to be on top of the world of sports with some of these challenges that you, Aneel, brought to the table. So open question to the panel. What are some of the things that needs to be changing? What are some of the things that you need to think about when going into investing in sports today? Open question.
Well, I mean, I think touching on a little bit of what everyone said, really looking at it holistically, right? From the technology angle, the entertainment angle, the experience, the consumer trend, all those things need to be taken into consideration heavily, I think, now in sports. Like I said earlier, sports is so global and touches every area. So I think today, the future of sports is very bright, but investing in sports, taking all these touch points into consideration is very important. For example, in the Davis Cup, the format change, the entertainment aspect, the use of technology, in the case of new franchises like the Marlins or the Kings, are good examples. So just taking a more holistic view on investment in sports, I think, is probably really key.
I think there's going to be a big shift towards live streaming, and that's a big field that today you watch everything on tablet. And there are a lot of parts of the world that haven't yet developed towards that. And I think if that develops so much, you'll find much more talent getting into that. But also technology. And if you look at today, for instance, last year when we signed with Formula E, we had the new version of the car that the battery can last for a full race. This year, and I'm happy to announce, Alejandro's here, he's speaking tomorrow, that we're signed with them for Extreme E, and that's the off-road version of an electric race. And 5 years ago, no one would have thought about that. So I think technology is really changing the whole playing field. Even when you watch a lot of the sports on TV or when it's on digital, you can see that there's a lot of interaction with the fan and so on. With Formula E last year, they introduced the fan boost engagement, and basically the driver, there's like a virtual road that the driver has to go on top of, and he gets a boost to overtake the other driver. So it's like Mario Karts, where we used to play when we were young. And that's the concept that it's built from.
Yeah.
So I think that this engagement with the fans and having it international, not just one country and it happens there, but it's actually international, I think changes a lot of the way we enjoy sports today. And that's, I think, where the development should go into.
I do think I actually spotted one of those off-road vehicles at the entrance to the Ritz, right?
That's the one.
Yes, I took a photo of that, I remember that. So it demands a lot more creativity, adaptability to explore and embrace some of these opportunities. So any other things that we should be thinking about if we go into the world of sports?
I mean, adding to what the Prince said, I mean, when we look at Formula E, I think that there is a lot of creative ideas, and I think that we are really pushing the boundaries of moving away from the traditional way of looking at sports. From a team perspective, when we were told about the fan boost and we're told about the attack mode, it is a very, very brand new idea. But even from the team perspective, we really, really enjoy it because I think that it really sets us apart. It shows that we are willing to be very, very creative, and a lot is regards to Mr. Alejandro Gag, who really is coming up with some really, really fantastic ideas with his team to really make things really, really interesting. And so from the team
What are some of the initiatives that you have done surrounding your team? I mean, you won twice in a row, right?
We won the Drivers' Championship and the Team Championship this past year, so we'll give a plug out to our team, and then last year we won the Drivers' Championship. And so, I mean, it's a very, very tough championship. I mean, I think Formula number one is really, really excited to be here in Riyadh. Last year was our first race here, and it was a tremendous experience. We didn't really know what to expect, but everything was incredible. But, you know, it's a very, very difficult championships. I think that you look at the number of cities that are involved now, ranging from London to New York to Paris, et cetera. All the big OEMs are involved now, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, BMW. So it's a very, very tough championship, but I think that you know, Formula has just done a really, really good job to make the race very, very exciting for new fans.
So we talked a bit about growth rates. We talked a bit about growth rates earlier in the esports segment. So what are some of the investment opportunities that you see in this space, and what should people in this room be looking for?
Esports, you mentioned? Sorry.
Across.
Across.
Sports, esports.
I mean, media is very big. You know, media and content is king, as they say. You know, new forms of distribution, new channels, new methods of consumption. So I think, you know, sports media is still a very saturated but also untapped in terms of, you know, what the future of that looks like.
And is that because it's moving away from broadcasting, or what are you seeing in this space? I know that you worked within media for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, broadcast and is still, you know, one of the biggest economic drivers of most of these sports businesses, and that's where the money is still, a lot of the franchises and the Davis Cup and events. But you know, there's a lot of disruption out there. You know, the early business that several of us were involved in, called the Players Tribune. Putting the athlete more in the front. You know, athlete-led businesses, brand-led businesses are increasing. You know, each athlete is becoming their own business in many ways. So, you know, the consumption of content that they create is a good example of that. You know, in the case of you know, Kosmos, we did this multi-episodic series with FC Barcelona. And it was kind of one of the first with the club to, you know, go in, you know, behind the scenes, in the locker, with the athletes, in the homes. And that's huge. And, you know, in the Davis Cup, we're producing a documentary at the moment on the acquisition of that. So content media is a big opportunity still, and it's integral to a lot of the sports businesses we see. You know, esports, as we touched on earlier, for sure, you know, which is in line with the consumption. But also in technology. I mean, as Aneel put it earlier, technology cannot be ignored. It's going to also drive a lot of the changes in the industry. So looking at that and keeping a close ear to that is going to be pivotal.
Great.
If you allow me, sorry, I'd like to be more selfish and talk about investing in Saudi in sports. And,
please do.
And the numbers are there. I mean, reflecting the numbers that I just said, that means that within 2030 we'll have 16 million people weekly active. And that means that we need more infrastructure, more merchandise, more investment towards, and I'm talking about all sports. So, and the growth that we've seen just by changing some of the regulations that we have already in the kingdom, the growth in gym licensing, for instance, grew in 2017 compared to 2018 by 26%. So that shows you that there's a big interest in that, and the biggest growth went to gym licensing towards female gyms. So the awareness is there, and I think there is the appetite for investing in Saudi in sports. And I'm talking in general, not just investing in the technology, how do you develop sports, but also developing some sectors within the sport industry in Saudi that is not yet developed.
Great. So we've touched on, one of the areas we haven't touched that much on is data, and I'm sure that that's becoming increasingly important as well. So how does the sports industry need to look at data, and what are some of the opportunities in the world of data?
Yeah, so a few other, I think first just understanding the numbers and where things are heading and how the value is being created, where it's going. So there's, I think it's 500 million views for esports within the last year. And then gaming is exploding. There's hundreds of millions of people per month are watching others play games on Twitch, which when a friend of mine started Twitch in 2006, people thought it was the craziest idea. And so everything is moving towards live streaming. The value of teams is also exponentially increasing. NBA teams in 2010, when we were involved with the Warriors first, were in the 200 to 250 million range. 2013, Kings were 500 million, and now on average teams are 1.5 and above. So the values of teams is increasing. And then in terms of data, there's different platforms like Spectrum or Sports Radar, which we're using to track literally everything. So from the fan experience, getting the right offer to the right fan at the right time, using computer vision to track player movements, look at different formations, supplement coaching with data to figure out how to improve team performance, use it on the business side to improve operations. Our arena tracks everything in real time. We can see real-time concession numbers. So data is disrupting the way that everything is done on the business side and on the player management side, on scouting, on how to get better at scouting and choosing the right players, on how to make player personnel moves, how to improve the team, how to improve even the flow with the arena, with how fans enter, with the traffic of taking the best route to get to the arena. So I think finding the kind of the right filter to be in touch with the best platforms possible across every different category, from business to operating the team to concessions to retail to merchandising. And we're always happy to share with anyone. We have a completely open book in terms of sharing all the most cutting edge platforms possible. They're capturing data on every different front.
It seems like there's a lot of changing that is happening and should be happening. Johannes talked about regulation. I think I'd use the last 5 minutes. Now the session is called, obviously, winning the game. So if each one of you could just spend a little less than a minute to just give a point of view, what does it need to take to win the game? So just one ingredient in terms of how do you win this game. Mark, do you want to kick it off?
Well, sure. For me, winning the game, again, it all goes back to the fan engagement. And Aneel pointed out something. It's just the small little details, like letting the fans know where's the traffic going to the stadium. Or maybe you can have your order. You can order your pizza or whatever you're eating in the car on the way to the stadium. So those are great points. And maybe we're going to talk later about how to infiltrate that for the Marlins, for MLB. Because those are the little details, and the fans, they look forward to that, for sure. And it's all about engagement, and they want to feel like they're part of the game, part of the event. So I love those ideas, and that's going forth. That's what it's come to, for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to speak to that, it's empowering the players to be their own brand, be their own platform, sure. Build their own business, and then it's empowering the fans on the other side as much as possible. To get access to the right content, the right player, the right game, the right experience at the right time. And we think of our team as a social network, and just the NBA alone has billions across all players and teams, billions of followers and likes just on Instagram alone. And so the more we can build software around catering to the player to be their own platform, and the fans to engage better and get access to that content, the more we'll create value for the whole ecosystem altogether.
I think as everything becomes so competitive at every level of sports, we from the team side are trying to really push the boundaries. We have a little football team in Portugal that was the most winningest team in Portugal. They're a third division club, but what we've done is we've probably recruited more players on a global basis than any other team, including the Premiership, including the Spanish League. I think we have over 18 national players on this little team, and that's why we've been able to ascertain this record. But, you know, team sports is just so competitive these days that you just really have to find any little mechanism that can just give you a little bit of breathing space to get ahead of the space. And, you know, with TECHEETAH, it's the same thing. Obviously, we're competing against some big OEMs, a lot of big budget teams, and again, we have to try to figure out, you know, where we can sort of gain a little bit of space where we can just be a little bit more competitive than others.
It's opportunity and access, I think.
Yes.
So the more opportunity you open and the more access you give to the fans, that they can interact with the players, with the stars, with the teams, with enjoying the event, the more growth happens. And we've seen that in our experience in the past couple of years. So and making it easy, making it that they want to be, they are part of this. I think that's the most significant thing that we can allow.
Nullah?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think my colleagues touched on most of the technical skill sets and edge required to win the game, as you said. So aside from that, I would leave it by saying, you know, authenticity, community. As we said, sports really brings people together. So I think, you know, that's an important aspect to not ignore the importance of bringing people together and the community aspect. I think that is also an important key to winning the game. Because echoing everything else, you know, access and bringing people closer to it is what is going to drive growth and more success.
So we have a new playbook for winning the game. The first one obviously being the fan engagement, the next one being turning the player into the platform, third one reinventing competition, a very important message from Your Highness about opportunity, opening up access, and last but not least, sport brings people together, and I think that's why we're all very engaged and loving when it comes to sport. It is about bringing people together. And thank you so much for each one of you for sharing those important insights, and for all of you, you have an interesting playbook to look at. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.